Lecture 2, From Theory to Hypotheses, Hypothesis Development and Practical Application. Welcome to the second lecture in our series on theory development and hypothesis generation. In our first lecture, we established the foundational understanding of what theory is and what it is not. We explored the essential characteristics of strong theory, examined various frameworks for theoretical development, and learned how to position ourselves on the minor prospector continuum. Now, we turn our attention to the practical application of these theoretical insights, the crucial task of transforming abstract theoretical ideas into concrete, testable hypotheses and building research that can survive the rigorous scrutiny of peer review. This second lecture focuses on the operational aspects of theory development, how to structure theoretical arguments, avoid common pitfalls, develop sophisticated hypotheses, and prepare your work for the review process. We will begin with common theoretical pitfalls that undermine even promising research. We will examine advanced techniques for integrating multiple theories, specify boundary conditions, and master the art of hypothesis development. Finally, we will conclude with practical guidelines for theoretical success and a comprehensive assessment framework to evaluate your own work. The transition from theory to hypotheses represents a critical juncture in your research. It is where abstract ideas meet empirical reality, where philosophical reasoning transforms into scientific prediction. A brilliant theoretical insight that cannot generate testable hypotheses remains merely an interesting idea. Conversely, hypotheses without strong theoretical grounding are merely educated guesses. The skills you will develop in this lecture, the ability to craft compelling theoretical arguments, develop sophisticated hypotheses, and anticipate reviewer concerns, will determine whether your research makes a lasting contribution to knowledge. By the end of this lecture, you will possess not just theoretical understanding, but practical expertise. You will know how to structure every paragraph of your theory section for maximum impact, how to avoid the pitfalls that doom countless manuscripts, and how to develop hypotheses that reviewers find both innovative and inevitable. Most importantly, you will understand that theory development is not a one-time activity, but an iterative process of refinement that continues throughout your research journey. The theoretical frameworks you develop today will form the foundation for your entire scholarly career. Common theoretical pitfalls and how to avoid them. Several common pitfalls repeatedly undermine theoretical development. Understanding these pitfalls and learning to avoid them is crucial for developing strong theoretical contributions. Pitfall 1. Tautological reasoning. This occurs when your theoretical explanation is circular, when you use the outcome you are trying to explain as part of the explanation itself. For example, successful organizations are successful because they do the things that make organizations successful. This provides no explanatory power because it does not identify the specific mechanisms that lead to success. Tautological reasoning often occurs when constructs are poorly defined or when the causal logic is unclear. To avoid this pitfall, ensure that your theoretical constructs are conceptually distinct from your outcome variables and that your causal mechanisms are clearly specified. Pitfall 2. Stating the obvious. Sometimes theoretical arguments are so thoroughly supported that they become trivial. If your hypothesis states something that everyone already knows to be true, then while your prediction may be accurate, it is unlikely to make a meaningful theoretical contribution. For example, hypothesizing that effective communication will be positively related to team performance states something that is so obviously true that it provides no new theoretical insight. The solution is to ensure that your theoretical framework challenges some aspect of conventional wisdom or provides new insights into familiar phenomena. Pitfall 3. Theoretical overreach. This occurs when you try to explain too much with a single theoretical framework, or when you make theoretical claims that go far beyond what your theory can reasonably support. Theoretical frameworks have scope conditions and boundary conditions. They do not explain everything. Be explicit about what your theory does and does not explain. Acknowledge the limitations of your theoretical framework and be clear about its scope conditions. It is better to have a focused theory that explains a specific phenomenon well than a broad theory that explains everything poorly. Pitfall 4. Insufficient theoretical integration. When drawing on multiple theoretical perspectives, many authors fail to adequately integrate them into a coherent framework. Instead, they present a series of disconnected theoretical insights without explaining how they fit together. If you are using multiple theories, you must explain why each is necessary and how they combine to create a more complete understanding of your phenomenon than any single theory could provide alone. The integration must be genuine, not just additive. Pitfall 5, weak causal logic. This is perhaps the most common and most serious pitfall. It occurs when the logical connections between your theoretical constructs are weak, unclear, or missing entirely. You may have identified important variables and even established that they are related, but you have not explained why they are related. Strong theoretical frameworks provide clear causal narratives that explain the step-by-step process through which independent variables influence dependent variables. Every link in the causal chain must be clearly specified and logically justified. Pitfall 6, ignoring alternative explanations. Many theoretical frameworks fail to consider alternative explanations for the phenomena they are trying to explain. This makes the theory vulnerable to criticism and limits its credibility. Strong theoretical frameworks acknowledge alternative explanations and explain why the proposed theory is superior or more complete. This demonstrates theoretical sophistication and strengthens the overall argument. Advanced theory development, multiple theories, and complex integration. As you become more sophisticated in your theoretical development, you will often find yourself drawing on multiple theoretical perspectives to explain complex organizational phenomena. This is both an opportunity and a challenge. When done well, theoretical integration can produce insights that no single theory could generate alone. When done poorly, it creates confusion and undermines the coherence of your theoretical framework. Approach 1. Competitive theories. One approach is to pit different theories against each other through competing hypotheses. This can be effective when theories make contradictory predictions about the same phenomenon. However, this approach must be used carefully. You cannot simply present two plausible theories and let the data decide the winner. You must provide theoretical reasoning for why one theory might be more applicable than another in your specific context. For example, you might argue that transaction cost economics predicts that firms will internalize activities when transaction costs are high, while the resource-based view predicts that firms will internalize activities when they possess superior capabilities. You could then develop competing hypotheses and test which theory better explains firm boundary decisions in your specific context. The key is providing theoretical reasoning for when and why each theory should apply, not just presenting them as equally plausible alternatives. Approach 2. Complementary theories. A more sophisticated approach involves showing how different theories address different aspects of the same phenomenon. For example, one theory might explain when a particular organizational practice will be adopted, while another theory explains which organizations are most likely to adopt it successfully. This approach requires demonstrating that the theories are truly complementary, that each addresses a different piece of the theoretical puzzle, and that together they provide a more complete understanding than either could alone. For instance, institutional theory might explain why organizations adopt certain practices due to legitimacy pressures, while contingency theory might explain which organizations will implement those practices most effectively based on their structural characteristics. Approach 3. Integrative theories. The most ambitious approach involves genuine theoretical integration, showing how the assumptions and mechanisms of different theories can be combined into a new, more comprehensive theoretical framework. This requires deep understanding of the underlying logic of each theory and careful articulation of how they can be meaningfully combined. Successful theoretical integration often involves identifying high-order theoretical principles that encompass the insights of multiple lower-order theories. This is the most challenging approach, but also the most potentially rewarding in terms of theoretical contribution. Guidelines for multiple theory integration. When using multiple theories, several guidelines can help ensure successful integration. First, clearly justify why multiple theories are necessary. What does each theory contribute that the others cannot? How do they complement each other? Second, ensure that the theories are compatible at the level of assumptions. Theories with fundamentally incompatible assumptions about human nature or organizational behavior cannot be meaningfully integrated. Third, specify how the theories relate to each other. Are they addressing different levels of analysis, different stages of a process, different boundary conditions? Fourth, create a coherent narrative that weaves the theories together into a unified framework. The integration should feel natural and logical, not forced or artificial. Boundary conditions and scope, defining your theoretical territory. One of the most important but often overlooked aspects of theory development is the specification of boundary conditions. No theory applies everywhere and always. Strong theories are explicit about their scope. They specify the context, populations, and conditions where the theoretical relationships are expected to hold. Types of boundary conditions. Contextual boundary conditions specify the organizational, industry, or environmental context where your theory applies. For example, a theory of organizational learning might apply differently in stable versus dynamic environments, or in manufacturing versus service industries. Temporal boundary conditions specify when your theory applies. Some theoretical relationships may be stronger during certain time periods or may change over time as organizations or individuals adapt. For instance, a theory about the effects of organizational change might apply differently during the initial implementation phase versus the long-term adaptation phase. Population boundary conditions specify the types of organizations, groups, or individuals for whom your theory is relevant. A theory developed in large corporations may not apply to small businesses or nonprofit organizations. Similarly, a theory about individual behavior may not apply equally to all demographic groups or personality types. Conditional boundary conditions specify the circumstances under which your theory applies. These might include the presence or absence of certain organizational characteristics, environmental conditions, or individual differences. The importance of boundary conditions. Specifying boundary conditions serves several important functions. First, it demonstrates theoretical sophistication and intellectual honesty. It shows that you understand the limitations of your theoretical framework and are not making overly broad claims. Second, it provides guidance for future research. By clearly specifying where your theory does and does not apply, you help other researchers understand how to extend and test your theoretical insights in new contexts. Third, it helps prevent overgeneralization. By being explicit about scope conditions, you reduce the likelihood that your theory will be misapplied in inappropriate contexts, which could lead to contradictory findings and theoretical confusion. Fourth, it enhances the precision of your theoretical predictions. By specifying when and where your theory applies, you make more precise predictions that can be more rigorously tested. How to identify boundary conditions. Boundary conditions often emerge from the theoretical mechanisms you propose. If your theory depends on certain psychological processes, it may not apply to contexts where those processes are inhibited or altered. If your theory assumes certain organizational structures or cultures, it may not apply to organizations with different characteristics. Consider the assumptions underlying your theoretical framework. What conditions must be present for your theoretical mechanisms to operate? What factors might interfere with or enhance the relationships you propose? Also consider the empirical context in which your theory is developed and tested. What characteristics of your research setting might limit the generalizability of your findings? How might your theory apply differently in other contexts? Articulating boundary conditions. When articulating boundary conditions, be specific and theoretically grounded. Don't just list potential limitations. Explain why these limitations exist based on your theoretical framework. For example, rather than simply stating that your theory may not apply to all organizational contexts, explain specifically which contexts might be problematic and why. If your theory depends on high levels of trust between organizational members, specify that it may not apply in highly competitive or politically charged environments where trust is low. From theory to testable hypotheses, the art of prediction. The ultimate test of your theoretical framework is whether it generates clear, testable hypotheses. Hypotheses are the bridge between your abstract theoretical ideas and concrete empirical reality. They translate your theoretical insights into specific predictions that can be evaluated with data. Characteristics of strong hypotheses. Strong hypotheses have several essential characteristics. First, they are statements of relationship, not questions. A hypothesis is a declarative statement about the expected relationship between variables. It should be phrased as X will be positively related to Y, rather than will X be related to Y. Second, they are testable and falsifiable. This is the cornerstone of scientific inquiry. Your hypothesis must be stated in such a way that it can be tested with empirical data, and it must be possible to prove your hypothesis wrong. If there's no conceivable evidence that could disprove your hypothesis, it is not a scientific hypothesis. Third, they are specific and unambiguous. Your hypothesis should be stated in clear, precise language that leaves no doubt about what you are predicting. Avoid vague terms like related to when you can be more specific about the direction and nature of the relationship. Fourth, they are grounded in your theoretical framework. Your hypotheses must be direct and logical consequences of your theoretical arguments. You should be able to trace a clear line of reasoning from your theory to each hypothesis. Fifth, they are appropriately scoped. Your hypotheses should reflect the boundary conditions of your theoretical framework. If your theory applies only under certain conditions, your hypotheses should be qualified accordingly. Types of hypotheses. Direct effect. Hypotheses predict simple relationships between independent and dependent variables. These are the most straightforward type of hypothesis and typically form the foundation of your theoretical framework. For example, transformational leadership will be positively related to employee creativity. Mediation hypotheses predict that the relationship between an independent and dependent variable operates through one or more intervening variables. These hypotheses test your theoretical claims about the underlying causal mechanisms. For example, the relationship between transformational leadership and employee creativity will be mediated by intrinsic motivation. Moderation hypotheses predict that the relationship between variables depends on the level of a third variable. These hypotheses test your theoretical claims about boundary conditions and contextual factors. For example, the positive relationship between transformational leadership and employee creativity will be stronger when psychological safety is high than when it is low. Conditional hypotheses combine mediation and moderation to predict complex patterns of relationships. These are the most sophisticated type of hypothesis and reflect nuanced theoretical understanding. For example, the indirect effect of transformational leadership on employee creativity through intrinsic motivation will be stronger when psychological safety is high. The logic of hypothesis development. Each hypothesis should flow naturally and inevitably from your theoretical framework. By the time readers encounter your hypotheses, they should think, of course. Given everything that has been explained about the underlying theoretical processes, this is exactly what we should expect to observe. The theoretical argument leading to each hypothesis should be complete and compelling. You should explain not just what you expect to observe, but why you expect to observe it, through what mechanisms, and under what conditions. Consider this example of well-grounded hypothesis development. Based on social identity theory, we argue that when employees identify strongly with their organization, they incorporate the organization's success into their self-concept. This psychological connection motivates them to engage in behaviors that benefit the organization, even when such behaviors are not formally required or rewarded. Therefore, we hypothesize that organizational identification will be positively related to organizational citizenship behavior. This example demonstrates clear theoretical grounding, explains the underlying mechanism, and leads logically to a specific, testable prediction. Hypothesis development techniques. Advanced strategies. Beyond the basic principles of hypothesis development, several advanced techniques can help you create more sophisticated and compelling theoretical predictions. Technique 1. Process hypotheses. Rather than just predicting that X is related to Y, develop hypotheses about the process through which this relationship unfolds. This demonstrates deeper theoretical understanding and provides more rigorous tests of your theoretical framework. For example, instead of simply hypothesizing that team diversity will be positively related to team performance, you might develop a series of process hypotheses. Team diversity will be positively related to information sharing, H1. Information sharing will be positively related to creative problem solving, H2. Creative problem solving will be positively related to team performance, H3. This approach allows you to test not just whether your predicted relationship exists, but whether it operates through the theoretical mechanisms you propose. Technique 2. Temporal hypotheses. Many theoretical relationships unfold over time, but most hypotheses ignore temporal dynamics. Developing hypotheses about how relationships change over time can provide more nuanced tests of your theoretical framework. For example, you might hypothesize that the positive relationship between team diversity and team performance will be stronger over time as team members learn to leverage their diverse perspectives effectively. Technique 3. Curvilinear hypotheses. Not all relationships are linear. Sometimes theoretical logic suggests that relationships might be curvilinear, that the effect of X on Y might change as X increases. Developing curvilinear hypotheses demonstrates sophisticated theoretical thinking. For example, you might hypothesize that the relationship between team conflict and team performance will be curvilinear, such that moderate levels of conflict enhance performance, while very low or very high levels of conflict impair performance. Technique 4. Cross-level hypotheses. Organizational phenomena often involve relationships across levels of analysis. Developing hypotheses about how individual-level phenomena aggregate to create group-level outcomes, or how organizational-level factors influence individual behavior, can provide powerful tests of your theoretical framework. For example, you might hypothesize that individual-level creativity will have a positive relationship with team-level innovation, and this relationship will be stronger in teams with supportive climates. Technique 5. Boundary condition hypotheses. Rather than treating boundary conditions as limitations to be acknowledged, develop explicit hypotheses about how your theoretical relationships vary across different conditions. This turns potential limitations into opportunities for theoretical contribution. For example, you might hypothesize that the positive relationship between transformational leadership and employee performance will be stronger in uncertain environments than in stable environments. Technique 6. Competing mechanism hypotheses. When multiple theoretical mechanisms could explain the same relationship, develop competing hypotheses that allow you to test which mechanism is most important. This demonstrates theoretical sophistication and provides more definitive tests of your theoretical framework. For example, if both intrinsic motivation and social pressure could explain why transformational leadership enhances performance, you might develop competing mediation hypotheses to test which mechanism is more important. Theory and hypothesis integration, creating coherent frameworks. The ultimate goal of theory development is to create a coherent framework where all elements fit together logically and support each other. This requires careful integration of your theoretical arguments and hypotheses into a unified whole. Principles of theoretical integration, logical consistency. All elements of your theoretical framework must be logically consistent with each other. You cannot argue that X causes Y in one part of your framework and that Y causes X in another part, without explaining how both can be true. Causal ordering. Your theoretical framework must specify clear causal ordering among your constructs. Which variables are causes, which are effects, and which are mediators or moderators. The causal logic must be clear and consistent throughout. Theoretical parsimony. While your framework may be complex, it should be as simple as possible while still capturing the essential theoretical relationships. Avoid unnecessary complexity that doesn't add theoretical value. Empirical testability. Your integrated framework must generate testable hypotheses. If your theoretical framework is so complex that it cannot be tested empirically, it may need to be simplified or broken down into testable components. Theoretical novelty. Your integrated framework should provide new insights that go beyond what existing theories could provide individually. The integration should create theoretical value, not just combine existing ideas. Creating theoretical narratives. A strong theoretical framework tells a coherent story about how and why organizational phenomena occur. This narrative should have a clear beginning, antecedents, middle, processes, and end outcomes. The narrative should explain not just what happens, but why it happens, how it happens, when it happens, and for whom it happens. Each element of the story should connect logically to the others, creating a seamless flow from theoretical assumptions to empirical predictions, integrating multiple levels of analysis. Many organizational phenomena involve multiple levels of analysis: individual, team, organizational, and environmental. Strong theoretical frameworks specify how phenomena at different levels relate to each other. For example, you might argue that individual-level characteristics aggregate to create team-level properties, which in turn influence organizational-level outcomes, which are moderated by environmental-level factors. This kind of multi-level integration demonstrates theoretical sophistication. Balancing breadth and depth. Theoretical frameworks must balance breadth, explaining multiple phenomena, with depth, providing detailed explanations. Frameworks that are too broad may lack explanatory power, while frameworks that are too narrow may have limited applicability. The key is to identify the optimal level of abstraction for your theoretical framework, specific enough to generate precise predictions, but general enough to apply across multiple contexts. Testing theoretical integration. Once you have developed an integrated theoretical framework, test its coherence by asking several questions. Does every hypothesis flow logically from the theoretical framework? Are all theoretical constructs clearly defined and distinct from each other? Is the causal ordering clear and consistent? Are boundary conditions specified for the framework as a whole? Does the framework generate novel insights beyond existing theories? Can the framework be tested empirically with available methods? If you cannot answer these questions positively, your theoretical framework may need further development. Common mistakes in theory development: learning from failures. Understanding common mistakes in theory development can help you avoid pitfalls that undermine theoretical contributions. Mistake 1: theory shopping. This occurs when authors start with empirical findings and then search for theories that might explain those findings. This approach, sometimes called harking, hypothesizing after results are known, produces weak theoretical contributions because the theory is retrofitted to the data rather than driving the research design. Harking is unethical research as it does not follow the research process. The solution is to develop your theoretical framework before collecting or analyzing data. Your theory should drive your empirical predictions, not the other way around. Mistake 2: theoretical name dropping. Some authors mention multiple theories without actually using them to develop theoretical arguments. They engage in theoretical name dropping, citing prestigious theories to appear sophisticated without actually integrating those theories into their framework. The solution is to use only theories that are essential to your theoretical argument. Every theory you mention should play a specific role in your theoretical development. Mistake 3: assumption violations. Many authors combine theories without considering whether their underlying assumptions are compatible. For example, combining theories that assume rational decision-making with theories that assume bounded rationality can create logical inconsistencies. The solution is to carefully examine the assumptions underlying each theory you use and ensure they are compatible or explicitly address any tensions. Mistake 4: mechanism neglect. Some authors focus on predicting relationships without explaining the mechanisms through which those relationships occur. They specify what should happen without explaining why or how it should happen. The solution is to develop detailed causal narratives that explain the step-by-step processes through which your theoretical relationships unfold. Mistake 5: boundary blindness. Many authors fail to specify the boundary conditions of their theoretical frameworks, implicitly assuming that their theories apply universally. This leads to overgeneralization and theoretical imprecision. The solution is to explicitly specify when, where, and for whom your theoretical framework applies. Mistake 6: empirical determinism. Some authors let empirical constraints drive their theoretical development, choosing theories based on what can be easily measured, rather than what is theoretically important. The solution is to let theoretical considerations drive your research design, even if this requires developing new measures or using more complex methodologies. Mistake 7: novelty neglect. Some authors develop theoretically sound frameworks that simply repackage existing knowledge without providing new insights. While technically correct, these frameworks make limited theoretical contributions. The solution is to ensure that your theoretical framework challenges existing assumptions, integrates previously separate ideas, or provides new explanations for familiar phenomena. Mistake 8. Complexity confusion. Some authors confuse complexity with sophistication, developing unnecessarily complex theoretical frameworks that obscure rather than illuminate theoretical relationships. The solution is to strive for theoretical parsimony, explain as much as possible, with as few theoretical elements as necessary. The review process, preparing for theoretical scrutiny. Understanding how your theoretical framework will be evaluated during the review process is crucial for developing work that can survive scholarly scrutiny. Reviewers and editors approach theoretical contributions with specific expectations and criteria. What reviewers look for. Reviewers evaluate theoretical contributions on several dimensions. First, they assess theoretical novelty. Does your framework provide new insights or challenge existing assumptions? Reviewers want to see theoretical contributions that advance understanding beyond what currently exists in the literature. Second, they evaluate theoretical rigor. Is your logic sound and your reasoning clear? Reviewers look for theoretical frameworks that are internally consistent, logically coherent, and free from obvious flaws or gaps. Third, they consider theoretical significance. Does your framework advance understanding in meaningful ways? Reviewers want to see theoretical contributions that matter, that have implications for how we understand important organizational phenomena. Fourth, they assess theoretical coherence. Do all the pieces of your framework fit together logically? Reviewers look for theoretical frameworks where all elements support and reinforce each other. Fifth, they evaluate theoretical appropriateness. Are the theories you draw upon well suited to your phenomenon? Reviewers want to see thoughtful selection and application of theoretical perspectives. Finally, they consider theoretical testability. Does your framework generate clear, falsifiable hypotheses? Reviewers want to see theoretical frameworks that can be rigorously tested with empirical data. Common reviewer concerns. Based on extensive editorial experience, several concerns repeatedly arise in reviews of theoretical contributions. Insufficient novelty. Reviewers often question whether theoretical frameworks are sufficiently novel or whether they simply repackage existing ideas in new language. Poor integration. Reviewers frequently challenge the integration of multiple theories, asking whether the combination is truly necessary or merely additive. Weak causal logic. Reviewers scrutinize the logical connections between theoretical constructs, looking for gaps or weaknesses in causal reasoning. Inadequate scope specification. Reviewers evaluate whether boundary conditions are adequately specified and whether the scope of theoretical claims is appropriate. Limited testability. Reviewers assess whether theoretical frameworks generate sufficiently specific and testable predictions. Theoretical overreach. Reviewers question whether theoretical claims go beyond what the framework can reasonably support. Responding to theoretical criticism. When reviewers challenge your theoretical framework, resist the temptation to simply add more citations or theories. Instead, focus on strengthening your causal logic and clarifying your theoretical reasoning. If reviewers question your theoretical integration, provide more detailed explanation of why multiple theories are necessary and how they fit together. Show how the integration creates insights that no single theory could provide. If reviewers challenge your theoretical novelty, be prepared to articulate clearly how your framework differs from and advances beyond existing approaches. Identify specific ways in which your framework challenges existing assumptions or provides new insights. If they question your theoretical scope, consider whether you need to be more explicit about boundary conditions or more modest in your theoretical claims. Preparing for review. Before submitting your manuscript, conduct your own theoretical review. Ask yourself the same questions that reviewers will ask. Is my theoretical framework genuinely novel? Is my causal logic clear and compelling? Are my theoretical choices well justified? Do my hypotheses flow logically from my theory? Are my boundary conditions clearly specified? Does my framework generate testable predictions? If you cannot answer these questions convincingly, your theoretical framework needs further development. Future directions. The evolution of theory in management research. As we look toward the future of theory development in management research, several trends and opportunities are emerging that will shape how you approach theoretical contribution throughout your career. The rise of phenomenon-driven research. There is growing recognition that some of the most important theoretical contributions come from careful observation and analysis of novel organizational phenomena. Rather than starting with existing theories and looking for applications, phenomenon-driven research starts with interesting empirical observations and develops theory to explain them. This approach requires different skills than traditional theory testing. You must be skilled at pattern recognition, able to identify theoretically interesting phenomena, and capable of developing novel theoretical explanations for what you observe. Examples of phenomenon-driven research include studies of new organizational forms, like platform organizations, emerging work arrangements, like remote work, and novel management practices, like agile methodologies. These phenomena require new theoretical explanations because existing theories were developed for different organizational realities. Cross-disciplinary theoretical integration. The boundaries between academic disciplines are becoming increasingly permeable, creating opportunities for theoretical innovation through cross-disciplinary integration. Insights from psychology, sociology, economics, anthropology, and even fields like neuroscience and computer science are informing management theory in new ways. This trend requires broader theoretical literacy and the ability to translate insights across disciplinary boundaries. You must understand not just management theories, but theories from related fields that might inform organizational phenomena. For example, insights from behavioral economics are informing our understanding of decision-making in organizations, while theories from social psychology are helping explain team dynamics and leadership processes. The challenge of complexity. Organizational phenomena are inherently complex, involving multiple levels of analysis, feedback loops, and dynamic interactions over time. Traditional theoretical approaches, which often focus on simple linear relationships, may be inadequate for understanding this complexity. New theoretical approaches are emerging that embrace complexity rather than trying to simplify it away. These approaches include complexity theory, systems theory, and dynamic theories that account for feedback loops and emergent properties. These approaches require different methodological skills and different ways of thinking about causation and explanation. Rather than looking for simple cause and effect relationships, they focus on understanding how complex systems evolve and adapt over time. The importance of context. There is growing recognition that organizational theories developed in Western, developed countries may not apply universally. This creates opportunities for theoretical development that takes cultural, institutional, and economic context seriously. Context-sensitive theory development requires deep understanding of how local conditions shape organizational phenomena and the ability to develop theoretical frameworks that account for contextual variation. This trend is particularly important as management research becomes more global and as organizations operate in increasingly diverse contexts. Technology and theoretical innovation. Advances in technology are creating new organizational phenomena that require new theoretical explanations. Artificial intelligence, remote work, digital platforms, and other technological innovations are changing how organizations operate in fundamental ways. These changes create opportunities for theoretical innovation, but they also require staying current with technological developments and understanding their organizational implications. For example, the rise of artificial intelligence is creating new questions about human-machine collaboration, algorithmic decision-making, and the future of work that require new theoretical frameworks. Methodological advances and theory development. New methodological approaches are creating opportunities for more sophisticated theory testing and development. Big data, machine learning, and advanced statistical techniques are allowing researchers to test more complex theoretical relationships and to examine phenomena that were previously difficult to study. These methodological advances also create opportunities for new types of theoretical contributions, such as theories about how algorithms affect organizational behavior or how big data changes decision-making processes. Practical guidelines for theoretical success. Based on the comprehensive framework we have developed, here are practical guidelines for successful theory development that you can apply immediately to your own research. Before you begin, foundational preparation. Read strategically. Don't just read within your narrow specialty. Read broadly across disciplines to identify theoretical insights that might inform your phenomenon of interest. Pay particular attention to foundational theoretical works, not just recent empirical studies. Think like a prospector. Challenge yourself to move beyond gap filling. Ask what assumptions in your field might be wrong, what phenomena haven't been adequately explained, and what insights from other domains might apply to organizational contexts. Identify your puzzle. Use the AMJ research canvas to clearly articulate the broad theoretical puzzle your research addresses. This puzzle should be interesting to a substantial community of scholars and should anchor all your subsequent theoretical development. During theory development, construction guidelines start with mechanisms. Focus on explaining how and why relationships occur, not just predicting that they will occur. Develop detailed causal narratives that explain the step-by-step processes through which your theoretical relationships unfold. Be explicit about assumptions. Clearly articulate the assumptions underlying your theoretical framework. This helps you identify potential boundary conditions and ensures logical consistency. Justify theoretical choices. Explain why you have chosen particular theories and constructs. What does each contribute to your framework that others cannot? How do they fit together to create a coherent whole? Specify boundary conditions. Be explicit about when, where, and for whom your theoretical framework applies. This demonstrates theoretical sophistication and prevents overgeneralization. Test logical consistency. Regularly check that all elements of your theoretical framework are logically consistent with each other. Look for contradictions or gaps in your reasoning. During hypothesis development, translation guidelines. Ground. Each hypothesis should flow inevitably from your theoretical framework. Readers should be able to trace a clear line of reasoning from your theory to each prediction. Be specific, avoid vague predictions, specify the direction, magnitude, and conditions of the relationships you expect to observe. Consider process. Don't just predict direct relationships. Consider mediation, moderation, and other complex patterns that reflect the sophistication of your theoretical framework. Think temporally. Consider how relationships might unfold over time. Many theoretical relationships are dynamic rather than static. Plan for falsification. Ensure that your hypotheses can be proven wrong. If there is no conceivable evidence that could disconfirm your predictions, they are not scientific hypotheses. During writing communication guidelines, tell a story. Your theoretical framework should tell a coherent, compelling story about how and why organizational phenomena occur. This story should have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Focus on clarity. Explain your theoretical insights in clear, accessible language. If you cannot explain your theory to an intelligent non-academic, it may be too complex or poorly developed. Avoid common pitfalls. Remember Sutton and Staw's warnings about what theory is not. Don't confuse references, data, variables, diagrams, or hypotheses with theoretical explanation. During review, revision guidelines. Strengthen logic. When reviewers challenge your theoretical framework, focus on strengthening your causal logic rather than adding more citations or theories. Clarify integration. If using multiple theories, provide detailed explanation of why each is necessary and how they fit together to create insights that no single theory could provide. Address scope. Be prepared to clarify or modify the scope of your theoretical claims based on reviewer feedback. Demonstrate novelty. Clearly articulate how your theoretical framework advances beyond existing approaches and provides new insights. Assessment and self-evaluation. Measuring theoretical quality. To ensure that your theoretical development meets the highest standards, use this comprehensive assessment framework to evaluate your own work before submission. Theoretical novelty assessment. Ask yourself these critical questions. Does my theoretical framework challenge existing assumptions in meaningful ways? Do I provide new explanations for familiar phenomena or explain new phenomena? How specifically does my framework advance beyond existing theories? What would be different about our understanding if my theory is correct? Can I articulate my novel contribution in one clear sentence? If you cannot provide compelling answers to these questions, your theoretical framework may need further development to enhance its novelty. Theoretical rigor assessment. Evaluate the logical soundness of your framework. Is my causal logic clear and compelling throughout? Are all my theoretical constructs clearly defined and distinct? Do I explain mechanisms, not just predict relationships? Are my theoretical assumptions explicit and justified? Is my framework internally consistent without contradictions? Weak answers to these questions indicate areas where your theoretical rigor needs strengthening. Theoretical integration assessment. If you use multiple theories, assess your integration. Why is each theory necessary for my framework? How do the theories complement each other? Do I create genuine integration or just additive combination? Are the assumptions of different theories compatible? Does my integration generate insights beyond individual theories? Poor integration is a common reason for theoretical criticism, so ensure your answers are strong. Theoretical scope assessment. Evaluate the appropriate scope of your framework. Have I clearly specified boundary conditions? Am I making claims that are too broad or too narrow? Do I acknowledge limitations honestly? Are my scope conditions theoretically justified? Have I considered alternative explanations? Appropriate scope specification demonstrates theoretical maturity and prevents overreach. Theoretical testability assessment. Ensure your framework generates testable predictions. Do my hypotheses flow logically from my theory? Are my predictions specific and falsifiable? Can my theoretical relationships be measured empirically? Do I specify conditions under which my theory would be wrong? Are my hypotheses appropriately complex given my theory? Untestable theories cannot contribute to scientific knowledge, regardless of their logical appeal. Theoretical communication assessment. Evaluate how effectively you communicate your theoretical insights. Can I explain my core theoretical insight in plain English? Does my theoretical framework tell a coherent story? Do I avoid the 5 things that are not theory? Would my theoretical contribution be clear to reviewers? Poor communication can undermine even the strongest theoretical contributions. Overall, theoretical contribution assessment. Finally, assess your overall contribution. Does my theoretical framework matter for understanding important phenomena? Will other scholars build on my theoretical insights? Does my framework generate interesting new research questions? Am I proud of the theoretical contribution I am making? Would I be excited to read this theoretical framework if someone else wrote it? These questions help you evaluate whether your theoretical development represents a meaningful contribution to knowledge. Conclusion: your journey as a theoretical architect. As we conclude this comprehensive exploration of theory development and hypothesis generation, I want you to understand that you are embarking on one of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of scholarly life. The development of theory is not just an academic exercise. It is an act of intellectual creation that has the potential to change how we understand and improve organizational life. The responsibility of the theorist. As a theorist, you have several important responsibilities that extend beyond your individual research projects. First, you have a responsibility to be rigorous in your thinking and precise in your reasoning. Sloppy theory leads to sloppy research and ultimately undermines the credibility of our entire field. Every theoretical framework you develop should meet the highest standards of logical consistency and empirical testability. Second, you have a responsibility to be honest about the limitations and scope of your theoretical contributions. No theory explains everything, and acknowledging limitations is a sign of intellectual maturity, not weakness. By being explicit about boundary conditions and scope, you help other scholars understand how to build on your work appropriately. Third, you have a responsibility to be innovative and challenging. The field advances through theoretical contributions that challenge existing assumptions and provide new ways of understanding organizational phenomena. Don't be content with incremental gap filling. Strive to make theoretical contributions that change how we think about important issues. Fourth, you have a responsibility to communicate your theoretical insights clearly and compellingly. Even the most brilliant theoretical framework is useless if it cannot be understood and applied by other scholars. Invest the time and effort needed to explain your theoretical insights in ways that are accessible and engaging. The rewards of theoretical contribution. While theory development is challenging, it is also deeply rewarding. There is no greater intellectual thrill than the moment when a theoretical puzzle clicks into place, when you suddenly see a phenomenon in a new and more powerful way. These moments of theoretical insight are what make all the hard work worthwhile. Moreover, strong theoretical contributions have lasting impact. While empirical findings may be superseded by new data, good theories continue to influence how scholars think about important phenomena for decades. Theoretical contributions also provide a unique form of intellectual satisfaction. When you develop a theoretical framework that explains complex phenomena in simple, elegant ways, you experience the deep satisfaction of genuine understanding. This is different from the satisfaction of discovering new empirical patterns or developing new methodological techniques. It is the satisfaction of explaining why the world works the way it does. Your theoretical journey ahead. As you continue your doctoral journey and beyond, remember that theory development is a skill that improves with practice. Your first theoretical frameworks may be tentative and incomplete, but with each iteration, you will become more sophisticated in your theoretical reasoning. Seek out opportunities to present your theoretical ideas to others and to receive feedback. Join theoretical conversations at conferences and in seminars. Engage with scholars who think differently than you do. Some of the best theoretical insights come from the intersection of different perspectives and approaches. Read widely, not just in management, but in related fields that might inform your theoretical thinking. Psychology, sociology, economics, anthropology, and other disciplines all offer theoretical insights that can inform organizational phenomena. The most innovative theoretical contributions often come from applying insights from one domain to phenomena in another. Most importantly, remain curious and open to new ideas. The best theorists are those who never stop questioning, never stop wondering why things work the way they do, and never stop looking for better explanations. Cultivate a sense of wonder about organizational phenomena. Ask why and how questions constantly. Challenge your own assumptions as rigorously as you challenge those of others. The future of theory in management research. The field of management research is evolving rapidly, and new opportunities for theoretical contribution are emerging constantly. Technological advances, changing work arrangements, globalization, and other trends are creating new organizational phenomena that require new theoretical explanations. As you develop your theoretical skills, position yourself to contribute to these emerging conversations. Don't just follow existing theoretical traditions, help create new ones. The theoretical frameworks you develop today may become the foundation for entire research streams in the future. Final thoughts. The theoretical frameworks you develop in your doctoral program will form the foundation for your entire scholarly career. They will determine not just what you study, but how you think about organizational phenomena. They will influence not just your own research, but the research of others who build on your theoretical insights. Invest the time and effort needed to get your theoretical development right. Don't rush the process or settle for theoretical frameworks that are merely adequate. Strive for theoretical contributions that are rigorous, novel, and significant. The field needs scholars who can think theoretically, who can develop compelling explanations for complex organizational phenomena, and who can advance our collective understanding of how organizations work. You now have the tools, frameworks, and knowledge you need to become a skilled theoretical architect. You understand what theory is and what it is not. You know how to ground hypotheses in compelling theoretical logic. You can navigate the minor prospector continuum to make innovative theoretical contributions. You understand how to use frameworks like the AMJ Research Canvas to ensure theoretical coherence. You know how to avoid common pitfalls and survive the review process. Now it is time to put these tools to work and begin building the theoretical contributions that will define your scholarly legacy. The organizational world is full of fascinating phenomena waiting for theoretical explanation. Your job is to provide those explanations in ways that advance our understanding and improve organizational practice. The journey of theoretical development is challenging, but it is also one of the most intellectually rewarding aspects of academic life. Embrace the challenge, trust in your abilities, and begin building the theoretical contributions that will make a lasting impact on our field.